Shalom and welcome back to Flipping Pages, Stirring Sauces, Tawada, and gratitude to those of you who have liked, subscribed, shared, and commented. And if it's your first time here, welcome. Some people are asking why I say Awa. In our ancient Hebrew language, Awa are the fifth and sixth letters of our alphabet, which means the foundation of breath. And that is why is used in reference to the Creator, the Most High, the Ancient of Days, Yahweh, the Great I Am, the I. All those references are made in reference to our Creator because He is the foundation of breath. When our breath ceases, the physical body ceases to exist. Tonight is a very serious topic that we're going to be discussing. And it's in relation to Kanye. And when I say Kanye, I'm not disrespecting the new title he has given to himself. Kanye, Khan, in our original Hebrew language, means prince. So I prefer to call him Prince Ye. And tonight, I'm going to start with a little backstory. In November of 2018, I thought my life was perfect. I was happy. And then something happened to show me that I could be even happier. And that something started on November 7th, 2018. And then I was very happy. For about 2 years, I was extremely happy. And then on November 5th, 2020, that happiness came to a crushing halt. And I didn't think my life could get any worse. See, when you make plans for the future, when you make plans for your retirement, and you get a kick in the side of the head from out of left field that you're not expecting. I got a Rasta Judge kick on November 5th, 2020. And then in April of 2021, I kind of started living again, you know? And then in, October 20th of 2021, again my world came to a crushing halt, and I just thought that life couldn't get any worse than it had gotten at that point. And October 29th, I was in Jamaica, and I was feeling so down, depressed, and really sad, devastated. And I was craving the cradle of my grandmother's arms. My grandmother's arms was a very safe place to be, because when my grandmother put her arms around you and comfort you, you know you're loved. And when my grandmother is busting your ass and disciplining you, you know exactly why she's doing it. And when she's doing it, she makes you feel like you deserve it. That woman could bust your ass and love you at the same time. Yeah. And so I was missing her and really was craving being in her arms. And then it went from that to me wanting to hear my father's words of encouragement, saying, I would prefer that you do this, but the final decision is yours. I wanted to hear those words so badly, and I was really missing my dad. You see, the first half of my life with my dad was very problematic and antagonistic. But when I had my children, that relationship with my dad became one of respect and unconditional love. And we became very close. And I had no problems hugging my dad and having him hug me back. And I was in Jamaica, and something said to me, you know what? He's right up there. He is right up there. He may not be able to answer you, but you can still have a talk with him. And I went up to my father's grave, and I didn't sit on his grave because to me that would be disrespectful. And so I stood close by, and I cried my heart out, and I cried my tears. I cried tears, and I poured my heart out to him. And afterwards, I felt free. It was very freeing. And I knew then that the woman that arrived in Jamaica was not the woman who was leaving Jamaica. And I said as much in my reflections video. I think that goes back to October 30th is when I did that video. And whatever anger I was feeling, I checked it that day. I checked my anger that day. And I made a decision that I wasn't going to let much anger me anymore. And I made a decision that day to forgive all the people who hurt me. And that decision, when I made that decision, I decided that I wasn't going to do anything I wasn't going to be malicious towards people who hurt me. I was going to let the Creator take care of the people who hurt me. And I would use the legal system to correct all the wrongs that were done to me. And those that I couldn't use the legal system to correct, I was going to leave up to the Creator. And you know why? Anything I could say or do to anyone would not be as bad as what the Creator would do to them when He was ready. I would never forget the wrongs that were done to me, because when you forget the wrongs that are done to you, you're placed in a situation of liability, because then those wrongs could continue to happen, and those people who have wronged you would just wrong you again and get away with it. So I made a decision not to forget the wrongs. Forgiving the wrongs doesn't mean forgetting the wrongs. And forgiving the wrongs doesn't mean that you will allow them to go on in the future. And so on November 10th, 2021, I publicly forgave those people who have wronged me and asked for their forgiveness. And since that date, I've kept my anger in check. People who have wronged me have said to me, "What happened to the miserable you?" The miserable me still exists, but that miserable me is in check. And I've managed to keep that anger in check until this week. When, and tonight I haven't made notes. Tonight I'm going to be speaking from memory and from my heart. But what they are doing to Kanye, Prince Ye, has angered me. It has angered me to the point where that anger wants to be unchecked. And I say, Kanye didn't go far enough. Kanye was not the first person or the only person to point out exactly what they were doing to him and what is happening right now. He wasn't the first person. And just have to read something here. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. For the past 4 years, I've been talking about this book, The International Jew. This was a gift that was given to me by my sister Denise. And a year ago, I tried to present this book on this platform. And every time I talked about presenting this book on here, my sister Denise would suggest other topics. It's like she didn't want me to present this book on this platform. And what was happening this week with Prince Ye reminded me of this book. And I realized the reason my sister Denise was trying so hard to prevent me from featuring this book on this platform is because the time was not right to do so. It was not the correct time to do so. The correct time to do so has arrived. This book was written by Henry Ford of the Ford Motor Company. And I was speaking to a few individuals who, I guess I can call them my friends, or people who are dear to me. And they were saying that they couldn't wait to hear my next segment. And I told them about what I was going to be presenting, some of them anyway. And they've been asking me, so what happened? I stayed up all night rereading this book and rereading it from the perspective that it should be read from. But before I read it, I asked the Creator for clarity. I asked the Creator to not let me make mistakes. Had I presented this book a year ago when I was trying to present it, I would have presented it from the wrong perspective, because I wasn't reading it from the correct perspective. But when I asked the Creator for clarification and for guidance, that was given to me. And Henry Ford of the Ford Motor Company felt very much that he was being toyed with, much the same as Prince Ye feels that he's being toyed with. And Henry Ford set out to find out who was messing with him. And I was going to present the entire book, but it's something that you have to read for yourself. But not only did Henry Ford say the same things that Prince Ye said, he wrote them down. The words may be a little different, but the message is exactly the same. The concerns are exactly the same. And I suggest people go out and pick this book up. Every time I'm reading this book in public, I get interrupted. And I don't know how many copies I've sold as a result of people coming up to me and asking me about this book. And when the only reason I've held on to this copy is because it was given to me as a gift from my sister. And when somebody thinks enough of me to go out and spend money and give me something as a gift, I do not give it away. I'm grateful for the gifts that people have given to me. But if you go out and buy this book for yourself, when you're finished with it, or after you're finished reading it, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with your brother. Share it with your sister, your neighbor. Share it with somebody, because I believe it was in the 1920s that Henry Ford of the Ford Motor Company felt that he was being prosecuted. He was being toyed with by people in the background. And I'm just going to read the introduction to you, because it's a complex book, and it's a very boring but interesting read. And the people who were toying with Henry Ford have 24 principles by which they live, and none of them are favorable to people outside of their community. They don't want to work for money. They will have the melanated man work and make them all the money. Henry Ford indicate that they want to get money, not earn money. They get money off the backs of others. And so I'm going to read. At the apex of his business career, Henry Ford, the industrial genius, sensed that a terrific effort was being made to take his business from him and manipulate it into the hands of the money changers. Mr. Ford had the impression that these manipulators were being engineered by powerful Jewish financiers. And I'm no great fan of Henry Ford, because he manipulated a certain situation to exact the outcome that was favorable to him. So while these people were manipulating things, he was also very manipulative, but not to the extent of these people. He called to his office the most intelligent research men within his acquaintance. He commissioned them to make a thorough study of the international ish. That's what I'll refer to these people as, the ish. And publish their findings in the Dearborn Independent, which at the time was the official organ of the Ford Motor Company. No expense was spared, and it is estimated that literally millions of dollars were spent by Mr. Ford on this project. The original articles were carried first in the Dearborn Independent and then published in book form. I have in my possession every copy of the Dearborn Independent. This complete set is beautifully bound in Morocco leather and was given to me by an Inner Circle member of Mr. Ford's personal staff. When the report on the international ish was originally published, it opened each chapter with a text taken from the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, or from the published statements of world prominent ish. The moment the manuscripts dealing with the ish problem reached the public, a terrific howl went up from official ishery. If I were to surmise the campaign of reprisal and abuse which was carried on against Mr. Ford and his company, this summary alone would require a book. Every instrument of torture and abuse which could be imagined was carried on against Mr. Ford. Smear, character assassination, ridicule, physical threat, boycott. The pressure was constant, consistent, and endless. The most powerful and enigmatic pressures imaginable were brought to bear on Mr. Ford to stop the publication of the international ish. Finally, the order came through to cease publication and to destroy the copies which were available. Ish and others went into the bookstores and bought and destroyed all copies which could be found. Sneak thieves were commissioned to visit libraries and steal the report out of the libraries. This made the book so rare and unfindable that it became a collector's item. The day finally came when the one ambition of the ish was fulfilled. Mr. Ford apologized for publishing the international ish and blamed subordinates for the deed. In 1940, I interviewed Mr. Ford on numerous occasions. In fact, on the day before his first automobile was put under glass, he and Mrs. Ford invited Mrs. Smith and myself to be their guests at Dearborn. On this occasion, he told me the whole story of his first car and how he happened to make it among the precious souvenirs which have come to Mrs. Smith and myself is a New Testament autographed by Mr. Ford and handwritten letters from Mrs. Ford commenting favorably on some of my speeches and expressing in her own handwriting Mr. Ford's appreciation for my activities. It was on the occasion of one of these personal visits with Mr. Ford that he gave me a sensational and shocking report. He said, "Mr. Smith, my apology for publishing the international ish was given great publicity, but I did not sign that apology. It was signed by Harry Bennett." For the information of the reader, this is for our information. Harry Bennett was a very auspicious and aggressive employee of the Ford Motor Company. He presumed his way into the confidence of Mr. Ford and later became known as an enigmatic and obnoxious personality. Space will not permit a thorough discussion of the activities of Harry Bennett, Mr. Ford's personal secretary for 34 years. Mr. Ernest Leibold told me that one of the worst things that ever happened to the Ford Motor Company was the employment of Harry Bennett. For a certain period of time, Bennett exerted virtually a dictatorial control over the affairs of the company. His alleged deeds, if summarized, might take rather a scandalous book. When Mr. Ford told me that he had not signed the apology, it seemed almost unbelievable. In fact, I could scarcely believe my own ears. Furthermore, on the occasion of this same visit, Mr. Ford said, "Mr. Smith, I hope to republish the international ish again sometime." He showed no signs of regret for having published it in the beginning. I did not report this conversation even to my most faithful followers because the original apology had been so thoroughly publicized that I knew it would be difficult to make people believe what I had heard from Mr. Ford's own lips. After Mr. Ford died, the man, Harry Bennett, evidently was very much disillusioned and embittered by the fact that he did not share generously in the inheritance. He collaborated with a ish by the name of Paul Marcus in the writing of a book entitled "We Never Called Him Henry." Here is Mr. Bennett's own story concerning the much publicized apology Mr. Ford is supposed to have made for exposing the machinations of the international ish. Here are Mr. Bennett's own words. Quote, "I got in touch with Arthur Brisbane and through him learned that the American ish committee could settle the matter. I entered into negotiations with Samuel Ottermeyer and Louis Marshall of the organization, and with Brisbane. They drew up the now famous apology, which was to be the basis for a settlement. In this formal statement, it was said that Mr. Ford would see to it that no more anti-Semitic material circulated in his name, and that he would call in all undistributed copies of the International Ish, which were booklets, reprints of the Dearborn Independent articles. For the rest, the apology said that Mr. Ford had had no knowledge of what had been published in the Dearborn Independent and was shocked and mortified to learn about it. Arthur Brisbane brought this statement to me at 1710 Broadway. I phoned Mr. Ford. I told him an apology had been drawn up and added, 'It's pretty bad.' Mr. Ford, I tried to read it to him over the phone, but he stopped me. So I signed Mr. Ford's signature to the document. I'd always been able to sign his name as realistically as he could himself. I sent the statement to Untermeyer and Marshall. The signature was verified and the case was closed. Do you see how manipulative these people are? They actually wrote the apology, not his employees, but these individuals from the Ish Association. All this was done without Mr. Ford's taking anyone else into his confidence. Edsel knew nothing about it, and Cameron and Senator Reed heard about it by reading the papers. Cameron's reaction was quoted by the newspaper. "It's always news to me, and I cannot believe it is true." Later, Mr. Bennett's story appeared in abbreviated form in True magazine. The above quotation appeared on page 125 of the magazine for October 1951. I gave the reader this information in order that he may read what follows without the risk of any deception concerning the Ford apology. To summarize, the press quoted Mr. Ford as apologizing for the publication of the International Ish. Mr. Ford told me in the presence of Mrs. Ford, Mrs. Smith, and Mr. Ernest Leibold, his secretary, for 34 years, that he hoped to republish it and that he did not sign the apology. Mr. Bennett, who at one time was one of the three most powerful individuals connected with the Ford Motor Company, admits that Mr. Ford did not sign the apology, but that he, Bennett, copied Mr. Ford's signature with accuracy, and that this signature is the only one which appeared on the formal apology. As far as I am concerned, I am willing to base my conclusions relative to the report, the International Ish, on the personal statement which Mr. Ford made to me. Whatever the case may be, the report in its original form, as well as the abridged edition herewith, speaks for itself and is supported by the logic of its content. Concerning the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, Mr. Ford said on February 17, 1921, "The only statement I care to make about the protocols is that they fit in with what is going on. They have fitted the world situation up to this time. They fit it now." It must be observed that when Mr. Ford made this statement concerning the protocols in relationship to his publication, The International Ish, this document, which is allegedly the secret minutes of the elders of Zion, was only 16 years old. The Ish had advertised to the world that the protocols of the learned elders of Zion were forgeries. Mr. Ford wasted no time arguing this question. He merely said to his friends, "No matter what they are, they fit what is going on." And those protocols are listed and outlined in this book. I'm 36 minutes in and I don't want to make this too long. Some students of the situation have pointed out that even the word forgery implies that the object referred to is an accurate reproduction of the original, for the reason every student of the Ish problem should have a copy of the protocols of the learned elders of Zion. Copies may be obtained by addressing orders to the Christian Nationalists Crusade, P.O. Box 27895, Los Angeles 27, California, price 50 cents. In his book entitled My Life and Work, which was published in 1922, Mr. Ford comments on his International Ish series with the following words: "Readers of our articles will see at once that we are not actuated by any kind of prejudice, except it may be a prejudice in favor of the principles which have made our civilization. There had been observed in this country certain streams of influence which were causing a marked deterioration in our literature, amusements, and social conduct. Business was departing from its old-time substantial soundness. A general letting down of standards were felt everywhere. It was not the robust coarseness of the white man, that rude idiocy, say, of Shakespeare's characters, but a nasty Orientalism which has insidiously affected every channel of expression, and to such an extent that it was time to challenge it. The fact that these influences are all traceable to one racial source is a fact to be reckoned with. Our work does not pretend to say the last word on the Ish in America. It says only the word which describes its present impress on this country. When that impress is changed, the report can be changed. Our opposition is only to ideas, false ideas, which are sapping the mortal stamina of the people. These ideas proceed from easily identified sources. They are promulgated by easily discoverable methods, and they are controlled by mere exposure. When people learn to identify the source and nature of the influence swirling around them, it is sufficient. Let the American people once understand that it is not natural degeneracy, but calculated subversion that afflicts us, and they are safe. The explanation is the cure. This work was taken up without personal motives. When it reached a stage where we believed the American people could grasp the key, we let it rest for the time. Our enemies say that we began it for revenge and that we laid it down in fear. Time will show that our critics, the Ish, are merely dealing in evasion because they dare not tackle the main question. No mature-minded thinker, in fact, no honest reader could question Mr. Ford's logic as summarized above. I agree completely with Mr. Ford in his expressed convictions that all America and the world needs to know the truth, and the truth shall set us free. The time has come for the truth. And you know what, Mr. Ford and Prince Ye did not go far enough. They didn't call them out as being imposters. And that is what they are, imposters. I'm speaking as an original Jew. I am speaking as a Hebrew Israelite, the original Jew. Okay? These imposters have stolen our birthright. But you know what they cannot steal? They cannot steal our bloodline. Our 9 strands of DNA says differently than what the world has told us. Our 9 strands of DNA says differently than what those imposters are claiming. Deuteronomy 28 tells us who we are, and they are not. They are the Ish. I am an original Jew. The melanated people, the 12 tribes of Israel, are the chosen people. These people are jumping up and down talking about anti-Semitism or whatever the word is. Well, I'm a Jew. Let them tell me that I'm anti-Semitic. I said in my last discussion that the winds are changing, and they are changing, and these people are imposters. And do you want me to prove to you that they're imposters? I can prove to you that they're imposters. Deuteronomy 28 tells us that we would be scattered throughout the 4 corners of the world, that we would be put in the belly of ships and taken to strange lands where we do not speak the language. Deuteronomy 28 tells us that a man will marry a woman and another man will sleep with her. It tells us that our children will be taken away from us and sold, and there's not a damn thing we could do about it. Deuteronomy 28 tells us that. In my little country, Jamaica, we speak the original language on a daily basis, not this Yiddish garbage that they speak. If you want to know who you are, read Deuteronomy 28 and personalize it. When were their hands chopped off for not gathering enough chocolate? When were their hands chopped off for not collecting enough rubber? When were their 5-year-old children were put out to pasture to work? And if those 5-year-old children didn't make their quota, their hands were chopped off. The pictures are all over the place. The story is there. How dare them? How dare them? Empty vessels make the most noise. Do you know why they try so hard to maintain the status quo? Because they know they're imposters. When were their babies cut out of their bellies and fed to alligators as alligator bait? When were they sold into chattel slavery? Where is it described that they've gone through what the melanated man has been going through for almost 600 years? I say Prince Ye and Henry Ford didn't go far enough in calling out these imposters. I am a Jew and I can call out these imposters because of my bloodline, because of my birthright. And the other thing is, let them tell me I'm anti-Semitic. They sit in the background and pull all the strings and make money off the backs of melanated people. Melanated people, you need to take your money out of certain banks. You need to stop buying certain brands. Melanated people, you need to start spending your money with melanated people and stop giving it to these imposters. The bus boycott. The bus boycott went on for almost a year. And you know why it worked? Because melanated people stood together and they carpooled and they walkpooled. And they said, if we can't sit in the front of your bus, we're not getting on your bus. You know whose dollars runs the world economy? Melanated people. You know why? We don't look at the color of a man's skin before we go into their establishment to buy goods. But they do. I said before in one of my videos that I lived in that community for a year. I rubbed shoulders with that community for a year. And in that year, I was the only melanated person at a wedding. And it was not a buffet. And somebody tried to hand me a plate to serve her. I told you what happened when we walked past the Italian man store to go to the Ish store. Because even if the Italian man is selling the same thing and his produce is in better shape than the Ish man, the Ish person is gonna walk past the Italian man and buy from the Ish man because they have to keep the community, the money in the Ish community. They sit in the background and they pull the strings. And if you go against them, if you say something they don't like, they come after you. They boycott you. They organize with everybody else to drop you. I say, melanated people, find out every business that Prince Ye is involved with and spend your money there. Spend your money with the people who still support him. Because you know what? Until this melanated community gets together and start shopping melanated, loving melanated, these people are gonna pull these strings and try to buoy us. Okay? They buoyed Nick Cannon. They buoyed him. And not only did they buoy him, they extorted him. Because that's what they're good at, extortion. that you like, share, comment, and subscribe. These individuals, these impostors, have made me very angry. I have not been this angry in a very long time. They seek to destroy a man for telling the truth about their backdoor dealings. They're organized, what would I call it now? Their organized way of keeping the black man underfoot, stepping on the black man, of ripping him off, of having meetings behind his back and making decisions for the black man or the melanated man. And he's supposed to just suck it up. The time has come to stand up and say, no more. We're not taking this. You can take your anti-Semitism remarks and shove them. This is their first protocol. Our triumph has been rendered easier by the fact that in our relations with the men whom we wanted, we have always worked upon the most sensitive chords of the human mind, upon the cash account, upon the cupidity, upon the instability for material needs of a man. And each one of these human weaknesses, taken alone, is sufficient to paralyze initiative, for it has over the will of men to the disposition of him who has bought their activities. Let me tell you something. When material things is of no value to you, when you don't care about material things, there's not a damn thing they can do to you. When you say, this is a material thing and I'm not going to attach myself to it, they have no control over you. They control you with material things. But when you show them that material things is not the be all and the end all, and material things don't really mean a hill of beans to you because they're replaceable, then you've won the battle. You've won the battle. Whoopi Goldberg, you should be a damn ashamed of yourself. Nick Cannon, you should be a damn ashamed of yourself. Let these people buoy you. Both of you. You gotta stop letting these entities buoy you. I'm gonna leave it there. I give you my peace. I give you my Ahab. I give you my Baruch. Shalom.